Good day to all. Computation of gross annual value, that is GAV, is an important step in computation of income from house property. Let me see how to compute gross annual value for the various situations. What is gross annual value? Gross annual value of a property is the value at which the property might reasonably be expected to be let from year to year. It is more like a notional rent which one could have earned in case property had been let out. Even if the property is not let out, the notional rent or deemed rent receivable is taxable. Gross annual value is the value of the property. And the property உடைய மதிப்பு அது let out ஆக வாடகைக்கு விடப்பட்டால் எவ்வளவு வருமானம் ஈட்டுமோ அதுதான் அதுடைய ஆண்டு மதிப்பா நம்ம கணக்கிட போறோம். This is a format for computation of gross annual value. See, in case of self-occupied house, computation of gross annual value is not applicable. So, the GAV for self-occupied house is nil. For the houses which are let out and deemed to be let out, the GAV is to be computed in this way. Compare three important values, that is municipal rental value, fair rental value and standard rent, and take the higher value, and the higher value should not exceed the standard rent. So this is the condition, but for our easy calculation purpose, this can be done like this. Municipal rental value and fair rental value is to be compared. By comparing, the higher value is to be taken. And the higher value which we have taken is to be compared with standard rent. Now we have to take the lower one, that is whichever is lower is going to be the expected rental value. The expected rental value is to be compared with actual rent after deducting unrealized rent if any, and is to be compared, and the higher one is to be taken, from which loss due to vacancy if any is to be reduced, so that we will get gross annual value. So simply we can say MRV FRV, whichever is higher compared to standard rent, whichever is lower is going to be called as ERV, and the same is to be compared with actual rent after reducing unrealized rent. We have to take the higher value, from which loss due to vacancy is to be reduced to get gross annual value. With this format, we will see how to compute GAV for the various situations. So this is question number 1. MRV FRV, real rent and standard rent is given. Here the word real rent is a term. So this is nothing but actual rent. So you must know what is to be done with real rent is another word for actual rent. So go with our format MRV FRV, whichever is higher. So 72,000, 90,000, higher value is 90,000 is to be taken, and compare with standard rent which is given in the question as 84,000, and we have to take the lower one, and this will going to be our ERV. See, in university exam, computation of ERV will be a short answer. So only by comparing these two steps we will get ERV, for which you will get 2 marks. Then the same must be compared with real rent. We have to take the higher value. There is no unrealized rent to deduct, and there is no loss due to vacancy given in this question. So comparing the real rent 80,000 with ERV 84,000, we have to take the higher value, and this will be our GAV. So in this problem, we have to understand the real rent is nothing but actual rent. Take the next question. Municipal rental value, fair rental value, standard rent under Rent Control Act. See, this is nothing but standard rent only, and we know standard rent is being fixed by Rent Control Act. So don't get complicated with that. Standard rent 1,75,000. Here the word actual rent received as given. and no other informations are given, and this is nothing but actual rent. So same way, MRV, FRV, whichever is higher, compared to standard rent, whichever is lower, and actual rent received is to be compared with ERV, and we have to take the higher value is going to be our GAV. Question number 3. Here the word rent received is given and no other information is given, like what is the, if it is any unrealized rent or loss due to vacancy, nothing is given. So this rent received is nothing but actual rent. In this case, rent received is nothing but actual rent. So in the same way, MRV, FRV is to be compared, take the higher value, and the same must be compared with standard rent and take the lower one, and with that ERV, rent received is to be compared. So in the first problem, we had seen the word real rent, and in the second question, we had seen the word actual rent, and in this problem, we are seeing the word rent received. So all are same in one, unless the other informations are provided in the question. So compare with rent received and take the higher one. This will be our GAV. Question number 4. Actual rent 7,000 per month. Municipal rental value and fair rental value is given. See this question, MRV, FRV is given, whereas standard rent is not given. If it is not there, we need not to worry. We can just skip that step. We have to take the higher value among these three, provided that should not exceed the standard rent. This is the condition. So if any such value is not given, we can just go with the data available. And here in this particular problem, actual rent is given for a month. So this 7,000 is per month. So while reading the question, you must be very cautious whether it is annual value or a monthly value, the rental value. See, we need a annual value because all annual values is to be taken in computation of income from house property for the previous year 2019-20. If it is given as a monthly rent, then we have to multiply it with 12 so that we will get an annual value. This is the only difference in this problem we are seeing. See, MRV, FRV is to be compared, take the higher value 66,000. There is no standard rental value is given. So you just take this 66,000 as an ERV. Sorry, here the value is missing. 66,000 is an ERV, and with that 66,000, the actual rent is to be compared. What is the actual rent? 7,000 per month, and hence it is to be multiplied with 12. And higher value is 84,000. So 66 here we need 66,000. 66 is to be compared with 84,000, and higher value will be our GAV, that is 84,000. See the next question. Municipal rental value, fair rental value, standard rental value, all three values are given. So we have to do a comparison. Actual rent is also given. The word actual rent is there. This will be the actual rent for 12 months. And there is an additional information that loss due to vacancy is given. So while loss due to vacancy is there in the question, how it is to be considered? See this, municipal rental value, fair rental value is to be compared, and take the higher value, that is of 65,000. With that, compare the standard rent 59,500. Take the lower value. Comparing 65,000 and 59,500. 59,500 is a lower value, and this will be the ERV. Actual rent which is given in the question is 72,000. Compare and take the higher value, and this is not a GAV. If we are provided with the information loss due to vacancy, then it is to be reduced from that higher value, that is from 72,000, 6,000 is to be reduced. We are getting 66,000, and this will be the GAV for the given problem. So this is how the loss due to vacancy is to be considered. After comparing the actual rent, we have to take the higher value from which loss due to vacancy is to be reduced to get GAV. Question number 6. Fair rent 90,000. This is nothing but fair rental value. Then standard rent is also given 70,000. Municipal value is also given. See, whatever be the order they have given the annual value, you just go with the same order, that MRV, FRV, whichever is higher, like that. Okay. Then annual rent. Here the word annual rent is given. This is also the same actual rent. 96,000. Annual rent received is 80,000. The annual rent is 96,000, whereas the assessee received only 80,000 as a rent for the previous year 2019-20, and vacancy period is 2 months. Here the vacancy is given in the not as a value, they have given in the month. So if it is the period as given, then we must calculate the rent which is applicable for these 2 months. How will you compute? The annual rent is 96,000, which is to be divided with 12. So 8,000 will be the monthly rent. If it is multiplied by 2, 16,000 will be the loss due to vacancy. Then while comparing with the ERV, what the rent is to be taken? We should not take rent received, we must take annual rent. So this you must be very careful, because while both annual rent and received is given, we must take the annual rent. We must take the rent which is applicable for 12 months. And especially when vacancy period is given, we should take only the annual rent. So annual rent for 12 months is 96,000. Take the higher one. 96,000 will be the higher value from which loss due to vacancy is to be deducted. Or loss due to vacancy is 16,000. By reducing the 16,000 from 96, we will get an GAV of 80,000. Question number 7. MRV FRV standard rent is given. Annual rent if property is let out throughout the previous year 1,68,000. So here they said annual rent for the property is 1,68,000 provided if it is let out for the entire period. So this is actually the annual rent, or we can say this is an actual rent. Unrealized rent is there. If unrealized rent is there, what we are supposed to do? This is to be reduced from the annual rent, and then we have to compare. And not only the unrealized rent, the loss due to vacancy is also given in the question. Loss due to vacancy is 7,000. See how it is to be solved. MRV, FRV, whichever is higher, compare with standard rent, whichever is lower. So ERV will become 1,42,000, and from which annual rent is to be compared. While comparing annual rent, if it is any unrealized rent is given, that is to be deducted, that is to be reduced from annual rent. So 1,68,000 minus 14,000, 1,54,000 is an annual value. Compare these two, take the higher one, 1,54,000 is a higher value, from which loss due to vacancy is to be reduced. Loss due to vacancy given in the question is 7,000. By reducing 7,000 from 1,54,000, we will get a GAV of 1,47,000. This is the answer. Question number 8. MRV, FRV standard rent. Real rent 8,000 per month. So the real rent is given as a monthly basis. We must multiply it with 12 to get an annual rent. Unrealized rent 4,000, which is to be reduced from the real rent. Date of completion 31/7/2019. Date of letting 1/10/2019. And MRV is okay. It is there in the question. See, date of completion is given. If date of completion is given, we must see whether it has happened in our previous year. Of course, it has happened in the previous year. When the house is getting to ready for giving for let out, it has been ready on 31st July. So only on from 1st August the house can be let out. August 1ஆம் தேதியில இருந்து தான் அந்த வீடு வாடகைக்கு விடுறதுக்கு தயாரா இருக்கு. August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, only for 8 months the house is ready for being let out. And hence, while computing the annual value, the municipal rental value, fair rental, all annual values is to be reduced for 8 months. So MRV is 84,000. This is an annual value which is to be divided by 12 and multiplied by 8, 56,000. The same way, everything is to be divided with 12 and multiplied by 8. We will get ERV of 58,000. Annual rent is to be reduced with the unrealized rent of 4,000. Then 60,000 will be the annual rent. Comparing and take the higher value 60,000, from which loss due to vacancy is to be reduced. Loss due to vacancy is the house is being getting ready though the completion is over on 31st July, the house was let out only